In the early hours of November 29th, 1970, a group of hikers stumbled upon something that would change their lives forever. The location? A cold, desolate valley in the heart of Norway, one so remote that few would dare to venture near it, especially during the harsh winter months. The valley, known only to locals as the Ice Valley, is not a place most would choose for a hike. And yet there, in the vast emptiness, a body was found. But this was no ordinary discovery. The body, burned beyond recognition, was not the victim of a simple accident or a random crime. No, the truth was far more disturbing. Her clothes, her belongings, everything had been meticulously stripped away, as though someone had deliberately erased every trace of her life. A passport was found, but it belonged to a country that had no business being part of the investigation. And in her possession, strange symbols were discovered, symbols that even to this day, no one has been able to decipher. The mystery of this woman's identity is one that has never been solved. Who was she? Why was she left to die in such a brutal and deliberate manner? Why did the people who came across her remain silent about what they had seen, never once stepping forward to give any answers? And what of the eerie notes found in the vicinity of her body? Notes filled with cryptic codes, codes that seemed to promise a story, but one no one could read. Was this a case of international espionage, a conspiracy so tightly woven that no one could break through? Or perhaps something far more personal, hidden deep in the heart of the woman herself? As investigators scrambled to piece together a profile of the victim, they found themselves running into walls at every turn. For years, they searched for clues, only to be met with more questions and more confusion. Could it be that the answers were deliberately kept hidden, buried beneath layers of mystery? Or was there something more at play here? Something more calculated, more terrifying than anyone could imagine? Stay with me, because what happens next will not only shock you, it will make you question everything about this case, every twist, every lead, every dead end. Who was this woman? And why was she left in the cold, her identity lost to the world? What secrets did she hold? And could those secrets be the key to unraveling the truth? But be warned, the closer we get to the answers, the more you'll begin to wonder if the truth is something we were never meant to uncover. The valley, known by few but feared by even fewer, was as desolate as it was unforgiving. Ice Valley, a place that lived up to its name. The locals spoke of it in hushed tones, almost as if uttering the words too loudly might invite the very chill of the land to creep into their bones. Located deep in the Norwegian wilderness, far from the prying eyes of civilization, it was a place where time seemed to stand still. An eerie stillness hung over the land, untouched by the bustle of human activity. The wind, when it did stir, would whip through the jagged rocks like a vengeful spirit, but it never stayed for long. Even nature had its limits here, its cold breath fading into the endless silence. And it was into this vast, unfeeling landscape that a body was discovered. On that fateful November day, as the sun hung low in the sky, two hikers made their way through the harsh terrain, their breath visible in the cold air. The valley stretched out endlessly before them, an inhospitable wasteland of ice and stone. But then, as their boots crunched over the frozen earth, they saw something, a figure, lying motionless among the rocks. What they saw when they approached defied all understanding. The body, a woman, was burned beyond recognition. Her skin was no longer flesh, but a charred, blackened husk, as if she had been consumed by some hellish fire. No wounds, no blood, no struggle, just the remnants of a life that had been cruelly extinguished. There was no sign of who she was, no obvious clues to her identity. Her face, once human, was now an indistinguishable mass of burnt tissue, making it impossible to tell if she was a local, a traveler, or someone from another part of the world entirely. She was a ghost, her existence erased by the cold and fire. Her personal items, the very things that could have told the investigators who she was, were all gone. Removed, as if someone had made a conscious effort to erase every trace of her life. But it wasn't just the body that stood out. There was something else. Something that made the discovery even more unnerving. The strange, cryptic notes. They were scattered near the body, partially burned, but still legible enough to be recognized as something more than simple scraps of paper. Written in an unfamiliar hand, with symbols and words that no one could make sense of, they seemed like a message. Though what it was, no one could tell. The notes weren't in any known language, and the symbols themselves appeared to be a mix of something ancient and something disturbingly modern. They weren't just cryptic, they were a puzzle with pieces scattered across the landscape and time, waiting to be put together. The authorities arrived on the scene, but their efforts were met with confusion. No one recognized the woman. No one had heard of any missing person matching her description. The investigation began, but each step forward only seemed to lead to more questions. Where had she come from? Why was she left here in such a way, so carefully hidden away from the world? One theory after another was proposed, none of them adding up, all of them falling apart under scrutiny. Was she the victim of a tragic accident? Perhaps a stray fire or some kind of accidental death? But then, there was the question of the burned documents. What kind of accident would leave behind coded notes, burned beyond recognition, yet still legible enough to offer a hint of something more? And why would someone go to such lengths to erase her identity, to destroy everything she might have known? The mystery only deepened, and soon whispers began to circulate. Was this a case of espionage? Perhaps the woman had been involved in something much bigger than a simple disappearance, something international, something dangerous. But as the investigation continued, it became clear that there was no easy answer. No matter how many theories were thrown at the case, the woman's true identity remained elusive. The only thing that was certain was that her death wasn't an accident. This was murder, but the reasons behind it were hidden, buried under layers of confusion and secrecy. In the weeks that followed, the investigators found themselves drawn deeper into a maze of false leads and dead ends. They couldn't ignore the sense that something was amiss, that there was a greater story here, one that no one was willing to tell. Someone knew what had happened, but no one was talking. And as the days turned into months, and the months turned into years, the case of the Isdal woman, this nameless burned victim, remained unsolved. But what if there was more to the story than anyone realized? What if the woman wasn't just some random victim left to die in a remote valley? What if she had been part of something far more complex, something far darker? Could she have been a victim of a larger conspiracy? Or was she merely caught in the crossfire of a situation she couldn't control? As time passed, new questions arose. Were the coded notes really just an innocent scribble? Or was there a hidden message within them, one that could reveal the truth about her death? Was there someone out there, who could unlock the meaning of those symbols and finally bring an end to the mystery? Or would it remain unsolved forever, a cold case, with no answers, no justice? The truth, it seemed, was buried beneath layers of smoke and ash. But with each passing day, the mystery became harder to ignore. And as we peel back the layers, we start to ask ourselves, what really happened to the Isdal woman? And more chillingly, could we be closer to uncovering the truth than we think? The cold was unforgiving, biting through layers of clothing, seeping into the skin like an unshakable curse. The two hikers had no intention of staying in Ice Valley longer than necessary. It was the kind of place that made a person feel unwelcome, as if something unseen was watching, waiting. The silence was unsettling. No birds, no rustling of leaves, just the occasional whisper of the wind slipping between the jagged rocks. It was in that stillness that they saw it. At first, they thought it was a pile of charred debris left behind by some careless traveler. But as they stepped closer, the realization struck them like a physical blow. A body, a woman, her form grotesquely twisted, her flesh blackened beyond recognition. The air carried a faint acrid scent, the remnants of fire lingering long after the flames had died. Yet something was wrong. The fire that consumed her body had not spread to the surrounding area. It was controlled, precise, as if someone had made sure she burned, but only her. One of the hikers hesitated before stepping closer. His breath caught in his throat as he noticed something metallic, glinting near the remains. It was an object. Small, unidentifiable, but unnerving in its presence. Scattered around were remnants of paper, charred at the edges, some reduced to nothing more than fragile, blackened flakes. But a few pieces had survived. They bent down, picking up what little was left. Strange symbols, a language neither of them had ever seen before. It was then that the weight of their discovery truly set in. The woman was not just dead. Someone had gone to great lengths to ensure that whatever story she carried with her would never be told. And yet, here it was, scattered around her lifeless form, waiting to be unraveled. The authorities arrived swiftly, their presence turning the desolate valley into the epicenter of a growing enigma. The body was examined, and almost immediately, the first anomaly presented itself. There were no signs of a struggle, no defensive wounds, no evidence that she had tried to escape her fate. Her hands, strangely, were positioned close to her body, as if she had accepted the flames that consumed her. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. The autopsy revealed details that only deepened the mystery. The woman was estimated to be in her late 30s, her body severely burned, yet traces of an unidentified substance were found in her system. Not a drug, not poison, something else, something that left even the medical examiners uneasy. It was as if whatever had happened to her was not meant to be understood. And then came the items recovered from the scene. A passport, half burned but still legible. It bore a name, but the problem was no records of such a person existed anywhere. More troubling was the country listed on the document, a place that, while real, had no known connections to Norway, no logical reason for someone from there to be in this desolate valley alone. And then, the notes. Authorities pored over the coded symbols, seeking patterns, clues, anything, but no known cipher matched the writing. It was as if the language had been invented for this purpose alone. Days passed, theories emerged, but none provided answers. Some investigators whispered about espionage. Perhaps she was a spy, caught in the middle of a mission gone wrong. But if that were the case, why was her death so brutal, so theatrical? Others speculated she had been involved in something even darker, an organization that didn't tolerate loose ends. Then came the witness reports. A few people had seen her in the days leading up to her death. Hotel staff, a shopkeeper, a taxi driver, but something was off. Each time she was seen, she was wearing a different name, different identities, the different stories. A woman who did not exist. One hotel worker recalled her demeanor, calm but always looking over her shoulder, as if expecting someone to appear at any moment. Another remembered the peculiar smell in her room, faint but distinct, something chemical, something that didn't belong. The taxi driver's account was perhaps the most unsettling. He had driven her to the outskirts of the valley days before she was found. She barely spoke, only giving brief, vague instructions. But when they arrived, she hesitated. She sat there for a moment, unmoving, staring into the darkness of the trees. And then, in a quiet, almost resigned voice, she muttered something under her breath. The driver couldn't understand the words, but the way she said them left a chill down his spine. It wasn't just a farewell. It was a sentence, a verdict, as if she already knew she wouldn't be leaving. Investigators searched for connections, a missing person, a family looking for a lost daughter, a friend searching for someone who had disappeared without a trace. But no one came forward. No one claimed her. It was as if she had stepped into the world just to disappear. And the more they searched, the more the case resisted resolution. There was something deliberate in the way she had been erased, as if every trace of her life had been meticulously removed before her body was set alight. Who had done it? Who wanted her silenced so badly that they ensured no one would ever find out the truth? Theories clashed. A spy, eliminated by an unknown force? A woman fleeing something so terrible that even death was preferable? Or something far stranger, far more terrifying, something that made the authorities themselves uneasy to dig too deeply? To this day, no one knows who she was. No one knows why she died in that frozen valley, surrounded by fire and secrecy. But one thing remains certain. She was not meant to be found. And whoever wanted her gone, they succeeded. Or did they? The investigators were left with more questions than answers. Every lead dissolved into nothing. Every potential witness either disappeared or had nothing of substance to offer. The weight of the case pressed down on them like an unseen force, an oppressive reminder that some mysteries are never meant to be unraveled. Some believed she was a fugitive, running from something far worse than death itself. Others whispered about intelligence agencies, secret operatives erased from existence the moment they became a liability. There was something methodical about how she had been stripped of identity, burned beyond recognition, left in a place so desolate that nature itself seemed to reject her presence. And then there were the coded notes. Specialists were brought in, people trained to decipher the most complicated encryption, but what they found was unsettling. The notes weren't just random symbols or meaningless scribbles. They followed a structure, organized, deliberate. Some resembled old wartime ciphers, others hinted at coordinates, yet none made complete sense. It was as if the message had been meant for someone who never arrived to read it. But the most chilling part, some of the codes appeared in different handwriting styles. That meant she hadn't written them all. Who else had been involved? Who had she been communicating with? What was she trying to warn them about? It was that realization that sent shivers down the spines of even the most hardened detectives. Because if she had been waiting for someone, if there had been another piece to this puzzle, where were they now? And more importantly, were they still watching? Speculation ran wild. Some said she was a courier, delivering information meant for powerful figures in the shadows. Others claimed she had stumbled onto something she was never meant to see. Something so dangerous that the only way to silence her was complete annihilation. One investigator, speaking years after the case had gone cold, admitted something unsettling. The moment we started digging too deep, we were told to back off. Who told them to stop? Why was there pressure to leave the case unsolved? The deeper this mystery went, the more people became uneasy. It wasn't just a case of a woman who had died under strange circumstances. It was the fact that someone, somewhere, wanted her forgotten. But the question remains, who was she? A spy, a runaway, a victim of something far larger than anyone realized. And perhaps the most terrifying thought of all, was she alone? Or are there others just like her, waiting for their moment to vanish without a trace? The Isdal woman case remains unsolved, but mysteries like these don't disappear. They wait, and they surface when least expected. Decades have passed, yet the questions refuse to fade. The Isdal woman is more than just an unsolved case. She is a reminder of how easily a person can be erased, how identities can be stripped away, and how even the most chilling stories can be buried beneath time and silence. There are those who believe she was meant to disappear, that every step of her life was orchestrated to lead to that lonely valley where she met her end. Some suggest she was never supposed to be found at all, that hikers stumbling upon her remains was an accident, a crack in a plan that was otherwise flawless. And yet, she was found. Her story refuses to stay buried. Imagine for a moment being her, wandering through an unfamiliar land, carrying secrets you can never speak aloud, looking over your shoulder, knowing that any wrong move could be your last. She had checked into hotels under different names, changed her appearance, and traveled across multiple countries in the months leading up to her death. Why? Who was she running from? Or was she chasing something? One final question lingers, one that may never have an answer. Did she know in those last moments that this was the end? Had she made peace with it? Or did she fight until the very last breath, hoping someone, anyone, would save her? And if so, did she ever believe that one day we would still be asking, who was the Isdal woman? Who wanted her gone? And why does it feel like the truth was never meant to be uncovered? Tell me, what do you think happened to her? Was she a spy, a runaway, a victim of something far darker? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you think this case is disturbing, wait until you hear the next one. The Isdal woman case was never truly closed. It lingers in the minds of those who dare to look deeper, those who refuse to accept that a person can simply vanish into the cracks of history without an explanation. But what if the story doesn't end here? What if the investigation was only scratching the surface of something far greater? There are whispers, fragments of forgotten reports, inconsistencies buried beneath decades of silence. A case from a different country, a different time, yet eerily similar. Another woman, another lost identity, another body found under circumstances too chilling to be coincidence. And then there are the numbers. The coded messages found in her belongings were dismissed as personal notes, mere travel records. But what if they weren't? What if they were coordinates, mapping out locations linked by something far more unsettling? A trail of events leading to a truth too dangerous to be spoken aloud. One investigator, long after his retirement, confessed something unsettling. We were warned. There were things we weren't meant to see. But who was warning them? And what was so terrifying that even seasoned officers were told to stop asking questions? Perhaps the most disturbing theory is also the simplest. What if the Isdal woman wasn't the first? What if she wasn't the last? What if, right now, there is someone else, somewhere, just like her, alone, trapped, running out of time? The truth may still be out there, waiting to be uncovered, but the real question is, are we even supposed to find it? What do you think? Was this a case of espionage, a lost identity, or something far more terrifying? Let me know in the comments. And if you think this mystery is chilling, wait until you hear what happened in the next case. Watch this next story, because some secrets refuse to stay buried.